straight. 2 sessions left. This next one is a special little cameo. Earlier in the day, we had a farmer showcase where we heard a couple of fantastic stories from farmers in Victoria. Well, today our story comes again from Victoria, but via Paris. Via Paris, that was. Every time I say the letter P, you're going to get a bit of feedback, so I'll just learn to stand back. My name is Anna Freeman. I'm a Policy Director at the Clean Energy Council, and we have been very pleased to be involved with this conference since its inception. Can we have a cheer for Karen Stark and the amazing job? There will be more thank yous to come, but what an outstanding success already this day has been. It is such an inspiration. I go to a lot of conferences in my line of work, and I have to say this is my favourite of the year, and it is because we hear some inspiring stories going on across the nation. It's not just the big end of town, it's not just the big stories, it's also about the things that small and medium enterprises are also doing in their day-to-day work. And so today we are going to start with a very short video from our next guest speaker, and then we are going to hear from Sandra Jefford, who has kindly agreed to dial in from Paris while on holidays. Let's go.
Our energy bills associated with irrigation were huge. They were about $100,000 a year, and we wanted to reduce those, so we had an energy audit done that really looked at where we're using the energy for irrigation. We were really lucky that the audit was done by Rob Welke from Telemenco, and he's a pumping system specialist. So we had a great rapport with Rob, and we're really attached to our energy audit report. As soon as we had the audit report, we started implementing Rob's recommendations, and then we met somebody who could help us match renewable energy to the irrigation system, and we developed a renewable energy action plan with Steve from AEI. The action plan reviewed each component of our irrigation system and gave us recommendations for the changes that we could make to be able to match irrigation to renewable energy, and how we might shift some activities to match with solar power that of course is only available during the day. One of the things that we did was put variable speed drives on the bore pumps and at the river. That means that we can start pumping once we have just a small amount of solar power early in the morning. We were really pleased with our final energy report. We're really attached to it, and we've used it numerous locations around the farm. When we've changed infrastructure, we've gone with Rob's recommendations. So in terms of new electric pumps that have replaced diesel and variable speed drives and so on. We have gone back to Rob a few times because we've made a major investment in new pumps, and it was really important that we get the best pump to do the job because that was going to be the most energy efficient solution.
Our initial involvement with the Willandra farm was when we got a call from Wilco, who said they'd had an energy audit done and they were keen to implement some of it. And the key area that we were involved with is the process control and automation, and our backgrounds in pulp and paper and the water industry. So we can apply all of those skills to this task, and we've been starting to look at alternate energy, but we definitely weren't a solar supplier or a battery supplier. We were really about how do you use those tools to provide a better solution to the farm. So what we started to do with Wilco and Sandra is look at each process on the farm, look at how we could optimise it, but more importantly look at how we could create more flexible power demand that would allow it to utilise solar better. So the whole outcome we were aiming for was to make sure that we could utilise the maximum amount of solar, reduce the grid usage to the minimum because that's what creates the cost reduction, and then also be aware at the time that we had to meet the requirements of the farm from an operational point of view. So the 3 main points to be able to do this work is, first of all, have an automation system. We have an AEI Smart Box, which is the brain to what we do, and then you need to look at the process and adapt the process to the smart box and to the renewable energy, and it's really about focusing on the system and how the system works in total rather than look at what's happening with individual bits. So we're not focusing on putting 100 kilowatts of solar or putting a battery or even putting anything. We're focusing on what the system is and what the outcome is.
Made, and we are going to get Sandra on the line, which may take us a moment. She may be waiting, croissant in hand. It is European holiday season for many pent-up Australians who've been working too hard for 4 years on their own. Here she is. I can see her on my screen. Hello, Sandra. Can you hear me? Shall I try that again? Hello, Sandra. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me, Sandra?
I can.
Excellent. Well, I am Anna Freeman. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Anna.
We have just watched the video about what you have done at your property, and it would be great to hear a little bit more. So you have a 400-head dairy farm near Sale in Victoria, and essentially you went after some energy savings. Can you just give us a little bit more colour about the journey that you went on? And then we might take some questions from the floor.
So can I share my screen? I've got a few slides if I can share the screen.
I'm just checking with the boss.
Should be able to. You should be able to, Sandra. Is it not allowing you?
Yep. No. I'm clicking and it's not working.
You might just have to talk us through it.
Okay. That's disappointing. It worked yesterday. So, yes, we installed solar panels. This is a real problem, not being able to use the slides because it's all graphic. So, yes, we've got 2 lots of solar panels. We've got 50 kilowatts at a bore, and then we've got 150 kilowatts of solar panels that services 1 bore and 2 dam pumps. So basically our solar power is being used for irrigation. We were trying to get away from those big bills. I'm really lost without being able to show my slides. So if I pull them up, even if you can't see them. So my next slide was about how well our solar power is matched to our irrigation. So we've now been using this system for about 2 years, and the first year was unusually wet and we had surplus power. This last year was very dry from mid-December till late March, and we found we actually didn't have enough solar power. So our bills were a bit bigger than we would have liked, but quite manageable. So prior to installing this system, our cost of power for irrigation was about 27 cents per kilowatt hour. We were pumping as much at night as we could and trying to minimise peak power. So then last year, our cost of irrigation got down to minus 4 cents per kilowatt hour because we were putting so much power into the grid that we didn't need. This last summer, as I said, it was very dry, so our cost of power was 6 cents per kilowatt hour, so still very manageable. So we've had 2 very different seasons, and we've just done an interim analysis, and the cost benefits are going to vary enormously on different farms. But for us, so far, the internal rate of return is about 15%, and we've got a payback time of about 7 years. But it would be better if we could run a controlled microgrid to move power around the farm. At the moment, our dairy has just a small amount of solar connected to it, but in the afternoons, we would like to move the power that we're using for the irrigation. We'd like to take that to the dairy and use that instead of buying the grid power. And we accept that we would have to pay AusNet a fee to use their poles and wires and pay a fee for the management system. But overall, farmers would be much better off if they could run controlled microgrids, and it would encourage more landowners to install renewable energy. So the benefits of our solar and irrigation automation, they include lower power costs. We're now buffered to some extent against electricity and diesel price increases. We've got labour savings because of the automation, which we think is about 15 to 20 hours a week. We've got water savings because when a pivot stops, the water stops. We've got improved pasture growth because we're more likely to irrigate when we've got free power. We've got lower greenhouse gas emissions, and the work has encouraged us to take on more projects to work towards net zero. So some of the other things that we've done, in addition to our renewable energy, we've installed electricity to pivots that previously ran on diesel. We've bought our first electric side-by-side farm vehicle. We've installed a fertigation system with the pivots, which means that we're not driving tractors around to spread the liquid fertiliser. We've got a registered soil carbon project, and we've got big plans for tree planting, partly to sequester carbon, but largely to provide our cattle with shelter, and there'll be some commercial timber in there. So that's a very quick summary of what we've done, and Wilco's here as well, so we'd be very happy if anybody's got any questions.
G'day, Wilco. Wilco is Sandra's partner. Well, it sounds like that energy audit that you commissioned in 2018 was completely transformative in terms of what you did. While the audience is thinking of any questions that they would like to ask, we'll have 5 minutes for questions, folks. Can I just ask you, if you were to extend what you've done to the dairy part of your farm practice, would that involve an expansion of the solar system that you have?
For a lot of the year, we've got enough renewable energy to be able to move power to the dairy. If we had a controlled microgrid, we would look at some other changes at the dairy in terms of load shifting. There is potential to reduce power use at the dairy, certainly. And
just for those that aren't aware, what are the barriers to the ability to have a controlled microgrid on site?
I think the main thing is the regulation, because the farm's a number of titles. We've got solar panels on 3 sites, but we've got the 8 metres on the different titles, and you can't generate on one point and use it at the other. Righto.
Okay, do we have any questions in the audience? I will need to repeat them so that Sandra can hear, I believe. Would you be able to introduce yourself before you ask your question?
Yes, I'm Jenny Clark. I'm coming out of a family dairy farming background, so I'm interested to know, and I've got having a seam moment about half the question.
That's terrible.
One part of the question was, is it likely, do you think, or have you already moved your milking times to adjust to your energy needs? And in a minute, I'll think of the other part of the question.
Did you hear that, Sandra? Have you adjusted your milking times as a result?
No, our milking times have remained the same. We've had solar power at the dairy since 2017, which has been okay, but the big difference between that and the alternate energy for irrigation is we don't have a management system for the solar panels at the dairy. So that's another area where we could make improvements. The management system has been absolutely critical to the success with the solar panels.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part 2 to that.
part two is speaking out of a legal background, which is you must have some potential to amalgamate your titles and get across the problem with not being able to transport energy around, or is it also that then you've got to do your own poles and wires?
Do you have any intention to amalgamate titles, assuming they are actually in your possession, in order to get around some of those issues that you mentioned before?
We've vaguely considered it, but so far we've been so busy getting the renewable energy operating, we haven't seriously looked at it. It's a possibility, but farmers like to keep titles because it gives you a bit of flexibility. So probably not. We'll wait and see what happens with microgrids.
Sounds like a thorny one. Any others from the floor? I guess the upfront cost for the system would have been, I assume, quite substantial. How did you manage the financing for that?
We have a good relationship with our bankers at Rabobank, and we spoke to them and said we want to do this big project, and they were interested in working with us, and we did a big equipment finance loan, so it'll be paid off over 7 years.
Sounds like it was a relatively straightforward conversation.
Behind the scenes, maybe it wasn't easy. The bankers made it easy for us, but I think it was one of the larger loans that they'd done for a renewable energy project when we started this a few years ago.
All right, well, last call for any questions. We've got a couple up at a table just over here. And then we will wind up.
Hello, as a very old dairy farmer, I'd like to ask you a question. Have you had any interaction with the Bega Valley Circular Cooperative?
A very old dairy farmer, she says, would like to ask you whether you have any interaction with the Bega Valley Dairy Corp.
No, Bega Valley Circular Economy
Oh,
Cooperative.
sorry, Bega Valley Circular Economy Cooperative. A bit outside your jurisdiction, I would have thought.
It is. Bega's quite a long way from us. Yeah. No, we haven't had anything to do with them.
All right, well, listen, we are at time. Can we give a raucous round of applause to our Willandra representatives, Sandra and Wilco? Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your holiday. I assume it's a holiday. I assume you're not on business.
It is.
And thank you so much for dialing into Dubbo today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Problems.
See you later.
Have a good conference. Bye-bye.